Hello and welcome to Female Cricket Live, powered by Radio. Match number 8 of the 2022 Commonwealth Games will be played today between New Zealand and Sri Lanka at Edgbaston in Birmingham, and the match will start at 10:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and you can catch all the live action on Sony Live app and Sony Sports Network. Now, before we start previewing the match between New Zealand and Sri Lanka, let us have a quick look at match number 7 that was played early in the day between England and South Africa, which England went on to win by 26 runs. So batting first, England posted a formidable score of 167 for 5 in 20 overs, thanks to Ellis Capsey, who topped full bowler 2 for in her 4 overs. In reply, the Proteas did put up a strong fight in front of England as they scored 141 for 4 in 20 overs. However, in the end, they fell shy of 26 runs. For South Africa, Ron Woolford while for England, Nat Siver, Sophie Eccleston, Catherine Brett, and Freya chipped in with a wicket each. Moving on, we have an exciting contest between New Zealand and Sri Lanka. And to preview this match, I have with me Ricky Sims, Neha Shetty, and Vitini De Elvis. So, brief introduction of our guests out here. So, Ricky Sims is a Sri Lankan cricket commentator, sports presenter, compere, and has been covering the sport for more than 12 years. Then we have Neha Shetty, who is an avid cricket follower and a cricket podcaster. And finally, we have Vitini De Elvis, who is an ardent cricket follower and is blessed with parents who have formerly represented Sri Lankan cricket team. So I welcome all of you to Female Cricket Live. All right, great. So Ricky, let us begin with you. Your first thoughts on Sri Lanka's match against England, their first match of the Commonwealth Games. However, they lost to England by 5 wickets. So what are your first thoughts on that game?
Well, looking at as a perspective, I thought England anyway would have been the favourites to win that game. Anybody would have thought so, because England is a top rank team, and compared to Sri Lanka, as a team, the England side, each player is good as the other, whereas Sri Lanka is dependent probably on 4 or 5 players to carry the burden of the team. So when you're playing a top cricketing nation, whether it's men's cricket or women's cricket, you all players have to be good. So England, on the day they played well. Sri Lanka, yes, they came second. So as expected, I think the results probably would have been expected that England will go through. But I think overall, Sri Lanka, the positive thing they could take is, I think, their bowling effort. I thought they did well to defend 106 runs. England won in the 18th over, and 5 wickets down. When Sri Lanka just 106, most would have thought that England would canter to an easy win there. But I think the Sri Lankan bowlers really fought hard and put up a good performance against a much experienced England side. England have a lot of experienced players, and they have been playing a lot more competitive cricket, whether it's international or domestic, whereas Sri Lanka are lacking behind. So Sri Lanka will take something out of the game and some confidence when they come up against New Zealand today.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you, Ricky, on this that Sri Lanka did put up a good bowling effort. Defending 106 was not going to be easy in front of a star studded England lineup, but I'm sure they did pretty well, taking them almost to the 18th over of the innings. All right. So, Neha, moving on to you. On the other hand, we have the New Zealand White Ferns, who are popularly known as. They have won the match against South Africa. So, what are your first thoughts on New Zealand's game against South Africa?
Right. So New Zealand looked good. They didn't look like a rusty outfit, that was coming after that disappointing home World Cup early exit. Batting first, making that commendable 167 is absolutely no mean feat, right? They were bolstered by the ever young Susie Bates and Sophie Devine, who just seemed to age like fine wine, put up that very good partnership. Susie Bates made 91, and Amelia Kerr also, chipped in. Later on, the bowling performance was also, really good to restrict South Africa. I think that it was a very impressive victory, and starting your campaign on that note obviously sets a very good like momentum right at the start. And yeah, I hope they can continue their good performance on to the rest of the tournament as well. And today is a crucial match against Sri Lanka, who can prove to be tricky, but yeah, looking forward.
Absolutely. Think as Neha, you mentioned about Susie Bates and Sophie Devine. They are also known as the Smash Sisters. So, Vitini, let me ask you, how do you think is Sri Lanka, especially the bowling, going to stop these Sisters from hammering them all around the park?
Yes, of course, New Zealand does comprise of a lot of talented bowlers. But on the other hand, so does Sri Lanka have very talented batters, I would like to say. The pitch has been very fruitful towards the batters at this particular venue, Birmingham. Yeah, so in case of today, players like Atapattu, De Silva, Oshadi should give their utmost best, particularly keeping their wicket safe. Thus, I think the best way to approach the innings is batsmen with a strong drive, like Harshita Madhavi, Chamari Atapattu in particular, can also be so strong in flicking off the legs and playing straight drives. So three very low risk shots, but definitely can allow to score in a wide arc on the leg side. Um, and also the main pro I would say is to leave the risky shots such as cuts and cover drives. Although it may seem a bit impressive on a pitch like today where bowlers are also enjoying a good help from the surface, the best way is to avoid such ways. So quick and safe runs are more important, especially at a format like today. So let's see how it goes.
I think some interesting points as mentioned by Vipini, and I think Sri Lanka will have to fight their heart out if they have to give a tough fight to the New Zealand team. So, Ricky, moving on to you, if we see the Sri Lankan women cricket team over the years, they have had some great players in Shashikala Sirivardhane, Chamari Atapattu, of course, she is going still strong, itching to close to 100 T20 Is. But if we see the talent, the kind of talent that Sri Lanka girls possess, vis-a-vis to the results that they have had at the highest level, they do not justify the kind of talent that these girls have. According to you, what could be the key areas that the girls need to improve going ahead?
Well, it's a good question actually because yes, some of them are really talent. For example, now the opener Vishmi Gunaratne is just 16 years of age. She has a lot of potential, a lot of talent at school cricket and domestic level, but still unable to convert that confidence and that talent at the international arena. So there are a few young players out there with a lot of potential, but I think it has been the lack of opportunity. To get better, you need to have competitive cricket, and you need to play cricket against people who are at a higher level, whereas these players in the domestic circuit, it is grown now. I mean, over the last 3 4 years, women's cricket in Sri Lanka has grown a bit, but before that, it was very stagnant and there was just a limited amount of players. But in the last 4 to 5 years, it has spread among schools, to the rural areas, to the village, and more players are coming up. So there is a bit more competitiveness, but still, for the international arena, it is not enough, and I think that is the problem the Sri Lankans are having. They had a good couple of series, one-day series and a T20 series versus India. That was a big opportunity for these players, and before that, they visited Pakistan as well. So they would have learned a lot. They would have learned a lot of experience playing on different wickets against quality opposition, and it is. Like I mentioned earlier, the strength will lie on a few players, of course, led by Chamari Atapattu, as you said. She's a world class player. She's one of the top players in women's cricket, no doubt about it. And there are another three or four experienced players who have been around for the last several years, like Inoka Ranavir, who bowled in the last game real well, Lama Kanchan and Lakshya De Silva. They are now experienced enough, but so they have to rally around Chamari Atapattu, and the youngsters have to come good when they are playing a good team like New Zealand. So it has to be 100% effort. It has to be a team effort. You cannot rely on one or two players to win you matches against big teams. If you're playing a team lesser to you or equal to you, we say if you're playing Bangladesh or even some of the other associate nations, etc., you some of the star players can win you a game. But when you're playing England, New Zealand, Australia, or India, you need a entire team combination. Everybody has to come good on the day, and they have to perform more than 100% if you're going to win that match. So it's very important today as well. These young players, this is, I mean, you don't get a better platform than the Commonwealth Games. Everybody is watching, so it's time for the young players to shine and do their bit for Sri Lanka.
Absolutely. I think, Ricky, you have summed it up very beautifully that Sri Lanka, there's no doubt, has a shortage of any kind of talent. They have a lot of them in that. Only thing probably they could look for is maybe more and more exposure that is given to young players like Vishmi Gunaratne, for example. So now, as you're talking about youngsters, Neha, let me ask you that New Zealand had three debutants in the last match against South Africa: Fran Jonas, Eden Carson, and Isabella Gaze, the wicketkeeper. So, what is your quick thought on these three debutants?
So I think it was decent debuts for the trio. They are young, and Carson I think had a rough outing. Right, she in the one over she bowled, she gave away 10 runs, but I still back her to come back stronger. Fran Jonas also went for 16 runs in the 2 overs, but she wasn't at her economical best, and I think she's just not getting her line and length right. But again, they're just youngsters, right, who have just stepped into the international arena and they are inexperienced. They've just come from the domestic circuit, and even for that matter, someone like a Leah Tahuhu was expensive. And if it was not for the divine intervention, like Sophie Devine, who took those four important wickets, I think things would have been really different for New Zealand, coming into this match. And talking about the other debutant, we had Izzy Gaze, the wicket keeper. I think she was good. And for her, again, filling in the vacuum left by the legendary Katie Martin, I was impressed with how she kept her backstory is also really cool, that she's always interested in wicket keeping. Overall, good debutants. And this is, I think, a kind of stage of transition for the White Ferns, considering, we have had the contract system that's come in, and a lot of key players are going to be missing out in the upcoming tours and everything. So yeah, I think a good start to their careers, but a lot to look forward to as well.
Absolutely. Great, great. Nice insights on the three debutants, Neha, I must say. All right, so Vidini, moving on to you. Sri Lanka, of course, lost the last match to England by 5 wickets, and now we know that it is going to be a do or die situation for Sri Lankan team if they want to stay alive in the Commonwealth Games. So, do you think there will be some additional pressure on the Sri Lankan girls when they take on New Zealand today?
Well, I won't say no in particular, but I'm pretty sure there is. But considering the overall, I think our girls should be proud for coming this far, winning the qualifiers and giving a good performance at the first match itself with the mighty England. I would like to highlight mighty England. I think they should really applaud themselves for that. Definitely, any team wants to win, and it's really not impossible for anyone to win. After all, cricket can be a very mysterious game until the very end. But in a personal point of view, I am honestly proud to see how much our girls are fighting every match despite very limited resources. The situation at the country at present, and yet they are here. I mean, they are there giving it all to make Sri Lanka proud. And I think they've already achieved their milestone, which I like to take a moment to appreciate the whole team. Thus, what may happen at today's match, I think they have already won hearts of many by participating and giving their utmost best throughout the tournament.
Absolutely. I think I would like to join you with in maybe appreciating the Sri Lankan team and the kind of effort that they have put forth. Of course, qualifying from the tournament in Malaysia, which was played just few months back, and there were five teams, and Sri Lanka was the only team that qualified for the Commonwealth Games. Ricky, if I have to ask you that Sri Lanka is coming from a loss, they are facing New Zealand today. So, what could be the pep talk that Chamari Atapattu would have given to the girls before the match?
Well, it's For Sri Lanka, I think they will be coming as the underdogs. It's a tough group for them. All three teams are better than them. So each game they play, they will come in as underdogs. So yes, there will be pressure, but nothing to lose and all to gain. So they can be the giant killers. That is something I think Chamri Atabatu will be focusing on. And I think it will be trying to install the confidence in these young players, especially some of them are playing New Zealand for the first time, most of them in fact, and there's quite a few young players. So it will be definitely a pressure game, but a lot will depend on Chamri Atapattu herself. As we mentioned, and as everybody knows, she's a dynamic player, but also her consistency in the last few series or matches hasn't been at its best. You see, when Chamari Atapattu performed, when even the last T20 against India, when she scored, Sri Lanka won. So I think it's going to be a big difference. If you analyze the Sri Lankan innings with the bat, when Chamariyatapattu does score, Sri Lanka can get to a compatible total of 150 plus, right? Because if she bats 10 to 12 overs, she's going to get you runs and Sri Lanka will get to a reasonable score. But when she doesn't, Sri Lanka will get to 110, 115, 120 maximum because Chamara Atabatu's strike rate is 102, which is better at 100. The next best, I think, is Nilakshi De Silva, who is 95, and the rest are far below. They're in their 60s, 70s. So when you take a look at that, when Chamara Atabatu fails, the others are struggling to get more than a runner ball. So Sri Lanka ends up at 110, 115, which is not enough against England or a New Zealand, Australia, or India. So you need to get to 150 plus. So I think the focus will be on Chamri Atapattu, whether you're batting first, chasing, she has to deliver with the bat, and the likes of Nilakshi De Silva, Vishmi Gunaratna, if she plays today, and the rest have to come good and support her. So it's I think they should go there, play their natural game without fear. If you go in with the fear, thinking these girls are big, these girls are good, they are world beaters, I think Sri Lanka then will lose a lot of confidence. They have to go out there and play without fear. They did that against India at home. Mind you, though India won, they were competitive in most of the games. Some games they put India a lot of under pressure. India have a lot of world class players, comparatively. So they did well. Some of the youngsters performed well as well. So they have to just go out there and play their best cricket, because on their day, if Sri Lanka does play their best cricket, they can topple any side. That is a fact. And in T20 cricket, it's known, two, three players come good, you can win a game. So Sri Lanka can do it. It's not impossible. So it's how they go and exhibit their talent on the field is the question.
Absolutely, certainly. I think Ricky, nothing is going to be impossible. And if Chamari Atapattu leads from the front, then I'm sure that that win, which Sri Lanka is looking at, is at their doorstep. Right. So, Neha, again, if we look at the last match which New Zealand played against South Africa, the top three in Susie Bates, Sophie Devine, and Amelia Kerr, they were amazing. But then the middle order was not tested. So, do you think if the top order falters against Sri Lanka today, the middle order of New Zealand could be exposed?
Honestly, that's a really good insight you bring, because there is a slight concern going in on that front, because the White Ferns rely heavily on the duo of Sophie Devine and Susie Bates. Later, they have Amelia Kerr coming into bat, and they are missing an experienced campaigner in Amy Satterthwaite. Now, but in the likelihood of a collapse, I think Maddie Green, Brooke Halliday, and Haley Jensen can really come to the fore and actually showcase their finesse with the bat, because they've been in the international circuit for some time. So it's finally time for them to show that they too belong here and actually deliver those good performances. And I'm expecting a little bit even from the wicketkeeper bat, Izzy Gaze, right? She had a good domestic season. She's kept wickets well. She scored those handy runs too. So I feel they can also come in and steady the ship. Although the middle order does look slightly inexperienced, it's very unlikely that the top three will falter or have a bad day like together, right? So yeah, that's my only hope, that they will still have the middle order to support them, maybe a little, yeah.
Yes, sir. Can I add something onto that as well to what Neha said?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Also, I felt in the last game, I thought South Africa did not really bowl well against the top three. They could not contain those the batters. They were bowling both sides of the wicket, and they were all over. Comparatively, also I feel that Sri Lanka have a better spin attack than South Africa, so that is going to be the test for the top order of the New Zealand batters. It's going to be a test for both how well the Sri Lankan spinners, Oshadi and Karanavira, come good, and also Kavisha Dilhari come good against the New Zealand batters. If they bowl well, it's going to be a challenge for the New Zealand batters. And on the other side, it's going to be a challenge for them to see how good they are against spin, against quality spin. So it's going to be an interesting battle, and I just feel that it won't be as easy as free they had against South Africa, against this Sri Lankan attack. And so those debutants who debuted in the last game, and the middle order will definitely come into play in this game, I feel.
Okay. And I think, as Ricky, you rightly pointed out, that spinners will be the strength of Sri Lanka. And if we look at the stats in the Commonwealth Games so far, I think the four out of the top five wicket takers are spinners. So let us see if Sri Lanka is able to exploit that strength of theirs. So let me ask you, Ricky, do you see somebody like a Rashmi De Silva coming into the playing 11?
Good question. You took it out of my mouth. I was just going to mention that she's a young, good talent. The only thing that may go against her, she's still not played any international T20 cricket. She's just played two ODIs versus India in the last series. But she's a handy person. I mean, to bowl 4 overs of leg spin. She's just 21 years old. She's very good in the field, and she can bat. She can bet. I have actually followed cricket for the last so many years. I initially saw her playing a lot of Indo cricket. So she's one of those tough characters, who is very swift, who moves around, and very wary type of a player. So Sri Lanka may decide to go with they may decide to leave out a seam bowler, like they did in the home series against India, because she can bat as well. She brings that all-round performance. And like I mentioned earlier, it will be a test for the New Zealanders against the spinners. So it might help Sri Lanka with an additional spinner, wrist spinner in particular. And you never know what may happen on the day.
Interesting insights on Rashmi De Silva. Right. So, Vitini, we are just a few minutes away from the game. So, let me ask you that if Sri Lanka, Chamari Atapattu, she wins the toss, what do you think she should do?
Apologies, I couldn't hear your question.
No
Repeat
problem. Yes, yes. So, if Sri Lanka wins the toss today against New Zealand, what do you think will Atapattu opt to do?
I would say to choose to bowl first, actually, considering the pitch. Even though it is fruitful for the batters, I would say as a score prediction, I would go to a 125 to 130. And I mentioned previously, the best is to go with bowling first. Although the pitch at the venue is high yielding towards the batting side, the bowlers have had a fruitful start, and bowlers have had a fruitful start. And I think going to chasing the score would be more better than having to bat first at a pitch like this at Birmingham.
Interesting. So, Vitini
Yeah.
feels that maybe if Atapattu wins the toss, she would like to bowl first. All right.
First.
Ricky, yes, you want to add something?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I just looked at the stats earlier on. Out of the 7 games played so far, 4 times the team chasing have won. Just 3 times the team batting first. So there is nothing much in it. And the team that has won the toss have decided to field first 4 times, and the other 3 times they have decided to bat first. So there is nothing much actually when it comes to the toss that has played a big role. But chasing and winning, only Australia have chased down India's total of 150 odd to win a game. The rest have been very low scoring. There was Pakistan, India, Barbados, Australia, and even the Sri Lanka England game. So chasing might be a bit tough. You never know. You never know how it will happen. New Zealand won their last game batting first, but they were put into bat by South Africa. So will they win the toss and bat? Will Sri Lanka win the toss and bat? I think I agree that sometimes it's good to see the score and chase, but looking at Sri Lanka's strength, they might want to put a score on the board and then bring their players, spinners into the game and see if they can. And like I mentioned earlier, if Sri Lanka can get to 150 plus, I think it's going to be difficult against the Sri Lanka spinners for a New Zealand side. So how good their batting is, will they strengthen the batting as well? I think Within earlier mentioned about another player, Harshika, who didn't play the last game. Will they bring her into the top order in place of Vishmi Gunaratna? The youngster, will they straighten their batting? So it's going to be interesting to see. But probably, I think Sri Lanka will have a better chance defending, putting a good score and defending than chasing. Because if New Zealand bat first and New Zealand post 140 plus, and if Chamara Atabatu gets out early, I think that's the end of the game. Sri Lanka cannot chase it down. So their best hope is putting a target on the board and try to defend it with their spinners.
Exactly. I think similar to what they did against England. So maybe we can look at something like that from the Sri Lankan perspective. All right, we are getting many questions from our fans, but before we start taking them, let us have some quick predictions. Neha, if you can start with your prediction for today's match.
Right. So while New Zealand has won, 3 out of their last 5 matches, Sri Lanka, on the other hand, has just played like 8 T20Is against New Zealand, and they've no, sorry. So Sri Lanka, on the other hand, has just won a game and they've lost 4. But if we look at the head-to-head record, right, New Zealand and Sri Lanka have played like 8 T20Is, and New Zealand has won all of them. Now, New Zealand is obviously coming into this match with a lot of confidence, right? Winning the last encounter must have given them the necessary push. Their top order came to the party, and the bowlers also bowled well, as we've discussed. But Sri Lanka, on the other hand, has had a tough outing. They struggled. Now, the equation is pretty simple. New Zealand would be looking to win this game because England has already qualified from the group, so they would also like to join England. And New Zealand does have the opportunity to do so. They can just enforce themselves against Sri Lanka and get that necessary win and a good boost to their NRR. Not that it makes a difference now. And I personally think that New Zealand women will start as favourites, to win this clash.
Right. So I think Neha, the two Sri Lankans out here may not agree with you, but let us hear from them their predictions. Vitini, what is your prediction for today?
Yes, like Ricky mentioned before, I think having a big score is the only way we can actually put a tough fight. If not, Susie Bates and Sophie Devine, if they come in the same form they came as the previous match against South Africa, it'll be really easy to surpass the score if our Sri Lankans restrict to 110, 110 score. So in terms of score, my prediction today would be around at least at a minimum of 135 to 130, I guess. And just like Ricky mentioned before, yes, it made sense when he said better if we go for the batting first and we can restrict the bowlers later, so we can restrict the rivals. And having a transparent score prediction would actually boost some level of confidence as well, in my opinion. And I know it's not impossible if the plan goes accordingly. Having to put a big number will definitely not be impossible, as our girls are young and talented, and everyone are equally talented. Everyone. Just because Apatatu scores a bigger number does not mean anyone else is less talented. It's like Ricky mentioned before. It's the opportunities, the match experience, and once they all combine, I think our girls will give a good fight today, taking whatever they couldn't do at the previous match, taking all this, making those right. So I hope at today's match they will prevail and make Sri Lanka proud.
Wonderful. Wonderfully put. All right. Ricky, finally, your predictions?
I love within his enthusiasm and hopefully, yes, actually, we want Sri Lanka to win. My heart says Sri Lanka will win. Behind of my mind, I'm thinking of one of those cricketing upsets, which generally happens in big tournaments, and not like bilateral series. But have you seen in past World Cups, Asia Cups? In men's cricket, these upsets happen, and Sri Lanka is favorites always to create upsets. So I hope something like that will happen today. But looking at the stats like Neha gave head to head and the records and recent form, recent form, the conditions there, which is better suited probably to New Zealand's style of play. So you will have to head New Zealand as favorites. You will say that they're going there, but Sri Lanka are the underdogs. But nothing is impossible till the last ball is bowled, and you never know. You never know if it's a Chamari Atapattu's day like she has done it in the past, single-handedly she can take the game away. So we never know. Hoping for the best, but yes, to be fair, in cricket in terms, New Zealand will go in as favorites.
Wonderful. Great, great. Thank you all for your predictions. Now let us start taking some questions from our fans. All right, Steve Carl is asking us, New Zealand have got a relatively young bowling attack. Do you see them do well ahead in the knockouts on the big days if they make it? Neha, would you like to answer this?
Sure, yeah. First up, thank you so much for the question. I agree that New Zealand does have a relatively young bowling attack. Leah Tahu is like leading the pace attack, but after the Commonwealth Games, we have no idea, if she's going to feature or not because she's not a part of the contracts. But with Eden Carson, Jonas, I do believe that there is inexperience that reeks, but still, these are bankable commodities. They're in the international stage because they've done something right at the domestic stage to make it there. So I think versus Sri Lanka, it won't be that much of a concern, But going ahead in the knockouts on the big days against the bigger teams, I think it is going to be slightly difficult for them. They're going to need Emilia Kerr, they're going to need Sophie Devine to bowl and get those overs out. But yeah, I think going ahead they might find it slightly tricky.
Thank you, Neha, for answering this. Right, can we have the next question? Right. Roshan Sharma is asking us, Chamari Atapatu being an accelerator is playing defensive. Is that a right approach? If she's also trying to build an innings, others are also doing the same. That is not helping the team. Ricky, would you like to throw some light on this?
That's an interesting question. I think, especially in today's game, being uh, a very important game, do or die game. I think she has to play freely. Like Roshan says, it has happened. We witnessed that in the Indian series as well in one particular game in the ODIs where she batted at number 4. If I'm correct, she came down the order just to stabilize the batting, and that is Roshan. The problem, like I addressed earlier, it revolves around her, and that fear is there once she gets out that Sri Lanka might not get a good score. So it's a thing where she's trying to play on the top of the order, maybe bat a few overs, try to get a start, and then see where she accelerates. But I would love to see her play in a natural game right at the top. Where Neha mentioned India and New Zealand have a young bowling lineup, and if she gets going, she likes pace on the ball. So definitely she has to open. She likes pace on the ball, and if those young bowlers don't get it right, and if it's a day, I think they can be destroyed. So yes, Ron, I think Chamari Atapattu has to play a usual game and hope for the best, because if she bats 10 overs, that is enough, because her 10 overs, Sri Lanka is going to get a good score, and the others have to ensure that they keep rotating the striker. What happens in the Sri Lanka's perspective is sometimes they are unable to rotate the strike and get at least a runner ball. So that puts additional pressure at the Chamari Atapattu if she's at the other end. So the others have to play around, chip in, get those 15, 20, 30 runs, and give Chamari Atapattu the best possible support for Sri Lanka to go on and get a competitive score.
Certainly. Great. Nice analysis by you, Ricky. All right. Can we have the next question? Okay, Harsh is asking us, New Zealand have had a very swift start to the campaign. What kind of threat do you see Sri Lanka pose? Vitini, if you can answer this, what kind of threat will Sri Lanka pose to New Zealand today?
Ricky, would you like to take this? I think you have more answers than I do, so I think your analysis is better than I am. So why not you go for it?
Well, the threat Sri Lanka can pose is going to be with their spinners. Definitely, New Zealand will be right on top. They will be a tough opponent. But the threat is, again, like I mentioned, the quality Sri Lankan spinners. They have a couple of quality left arm spinners. They have a right arm off spinner, a finger spinner in Oshadi Ranasinghe, Inoka Ranavir, the left arm spinner. Then Kavisha Dilrari and Chamari Atapattu chips in with their off spinners. And like we mentioned, if they bring in the leg spinner as well, she's going to make a big difference. So if Sri Lanka can produce 4 to 5 good spinners against those New Zealand batters, it's not going to be easy for that. That is going to be the biggest threat. Sri Lanka spinners to me versus the New Zealand batters is going to be interesting to see how they come good, and if the Divines and the others fail at the top of the order, the newcomers Neha mentioned, how are they going to tackle these spinners? It's going to be interesting to see. So that is going to be the threat.
Wonderful. All right. Okay, I think we have one final question from a fan. Okay, James Taylor is asking us, put on your prediction hat, Sophie Devine or Chamari Atapattu, who is scoring more in today's contest? Vitini, would you like to answer this first?
Definitely, Chamariyatapattu. Is that your thought? I would. I have my all my faith is for Chamariyatapattu. However, I think Sophie Devine will also give a tough fight and give a good score. Let's see. Chamariyatapattu is my prediction as always.
I expect
All
that
right, great.
answer. Yeah,
Neha, what do you think?
and just wondering also, is this James Taylor, very interesting name? I hope it's not the former England player who
Right.
had to retire early from international cricket.
Yeah. Right. Neha, would you like to predict? Who do you think
Right,
will be
putting
scoring
on
more
my
today?
unbiased hat, I would go with Sophie Devine any day. But then my heart, really does want Chamari Adipathu to score those runs, because she's been a class player. She plays in leagues all around the world, and this might be her chance to, just set the ball rolling for Sri Lanka to, achieve bigger things and actually get their win. But yeah, Sophie Devine is my answer.
Right. Finally, Ricky, who do you think will score more today?
That's an interesting question. Well, Sophie Devine is in form. Chamari Atapattu has to get going. And like Neha said, maybe it's a day. So I think I'm going to put my bet on Chamari Atapattu for this game.
Great. All right. All right. So let us see which of the captains score more runs in the match between New Zealand and Sri Lanka. Right. So I would like to thank Vitini, Ricky, and Neha for taking
Why?
out time and talking to us. Yes.
Why
Yes.
don't you
You are
take
saying
your
something.
pick as well? You can take your pick as well.
All right. So I feel Sophie Devine maybe just based on the form that she currently is in. Right. But honestly, I want Sri Lanka to win today's match so that the Commonwealth is live and
Exactly.
kicking. So yes, let us hope for a good contest between these two teams. So thank you once again, Ricky, Neha, and Vitini for talking to us and previewing the match between New Zealand and Sri Lanka. The match will start at 10:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and all the fans can catch the live action on Sony Live app and Sony Sports Network. So we'll be back again tomorrow at 2 p.m. IST to preview the match between Australia and Pakistan. So do join us for a conversation tomorrow at 2 p.m. and send us your questions using hashtag Female Cricket Live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us.
Thank you.